distress tolerance, and that means coping with strong emotions. And we can all benefit from these strategies, and they're about how to manage upsetting feelings that come up and feel like they threaten us and they overwhelm us. So when that emotion just goes through the roof and you feel like you just can't even think in that moment because you're just so full of emotion. So these are strategies of how to deal with that and how to kind of pull ourselves back from that place. Because learning to cope with emotional pain when you can't make things better straight away, because we can't always avoid emotional pain, and sometimes we're not able to make this pain disappear, but it's about doing things that are helpful at these times and when we're really upset to help us get through these moments. So crisis survival skills is about getting through the moment without making it worse, because quite often we've got strategies that we hold on to and that we use, cognitively knowing, we know that doesn't make me feel better, but we do them in a moment when we're just trying to manage overwhelming feelings. So what we want to do is try and do something different where we know that it's going to reduce that emotional pain and it's going to not make things worse. So it's thinking of some new tools to add to our skills toolbox. That was just not easy to say, was it? So what is emotional pain? What do we mean by that? Because we all have probably a different understanding of what that is. But all emotions can lead us to feel something. But some emotions can lead us to feel almost physically in pain. And emotions actually tap into a part of the brain that responds to physical pain as well. So when people talk about emotional pain, it is felt in the same part of the brain as some physical pain. So yeah, they can be really difficult. They can feel like they physically hurt us. What kind of things cause emotional pain? That can be absolutely anything. It can be grief, loss of some kind, an argument, a disagreement, stress, relationship difficulties, whether that, friendships or family. Work can cause lots of emotional pain, money problems, a global pandemic, coronavirus, who knew that was coming? Lockdown. These things can all cause us to feel certain levels of emotional pain. Can we stop things that cause emotional pain? Can we just decide never to have money problems again? Can we plan never to have an argument ever again? Can we make that decision that we're never going to lose anybody ever again? No, we can't. These are things that we can't control. We can't avoid them. But what we can do is we can work really hard to reduce the likelihood of these things happening or the potential of these things to happen. But we can't avoid situations. They just come in. Things like the lockdown, the coronavirus, it just came in. We didn't invite it, we didn't plan for it, it just happened, and we have to learn how to manage it and have to learn how to navigate that. So we can't stop these things from occurring. What we can do is control how we manage them. So everybody in life has emotional pain at some time or another. Life can be good, but it does have its ups and downs. It's not rosy all the time. It's not perfect. It's if we were looking at a graph, it would just be peaks and troughs constantly because it just never stays the same. So we can all have downs sometimes, no matter how much we don't want them and no matter how much we try to avoid them. We can't always sort out the things that cause us pain straight away. So sometimes we can't change a situation. So we have to learn how to tolerate that moment and maybe do things that can work towards change, but not necessarily we're not able to change that particular situation immediately. So for example, during lockdown, the feeling of loneliness and isolation came up for lots and lots of people. But now when you're in a 3-month lockdown, there's nothing you can do to change that, because that's the way it is. There are things you can do to meet that need. You know, it might be to give someone a ring, but the pain that people are experiencing and the discomfort is going to stick around for a while. So it's about tolerating that and doing something differently to manage that feeling, because we can't change it straight away. Let's look at physical pain. So as an example, I've cut my hand in the garden and it really hurts. It hurts when I hold my fork, it hurts when I hold the remote control, when I'm writing with a pen. It really hurts. So if I wished really hard for that pain to go away, would it? No. If I ignore the pain and just said to myself, oh, it's not going to hurt, it's not going to hurt, would it stop hurting? No. And actually, if I ignore the pain and I don't do anything about it, it could get worse. It could get infected. I could knock it and it could open up even more. So I could make the wound bigger. So I can't ignore it. But what I can do is I can cope with it. I can cope with it by cleaning it, putting a plaster on, trying not to knock it, using my other hand to eat my dinner with. And it'll still hurt, but the next day it might feel a little bit better, and then the day after that it might feel a little bit more better, and in a few days it will heal, and I might forget about it until I knock it and then I'm reminded, oh yeah, that's still healing. But that's physical pain. Whereas if we look at emotional pain, for example, I've fallen out with someone at work and it's just a disaster and I feel really unhappy about it. I can't wish for that unhappiness to go away. I can't wish to make it better. And I also can't ignore it. I can't stay away from that pain that the unhappiness is causing, because I'm going to see that person at work. I'm going to bump into them. And when I bump into them, if I've not dealt with it in any way, all those feelings of unhappiness are going to just come flooding back. A bit like bumping your hand when you're trying to ignore your cut. You're like, oh, yeah, there it is. It's not gone anywhere. It still hurts. So you can't ignore emotional pain as well. And it takes time to heal, just like physical pain does. Emotional pain also takes time to heal. So not coping with emotional pain, it can lead to more problems. For example, you know, with my friend at work, if I keep ignoring them and I don't try and work it out, I don't talk about it, I don't try and resolve it in any way, it might get worse. It might get bigger. That emotional pain and that rift could develop and grow, and it could just fester like an untreated wound. So I have to deal with it. I have to cope with that emotional pain. Just like I have to cope with a cut on my hand, I have to do something. I have to tackle it. And it might be difficult, but it will make things better. But we need to know what to do. So crisis survival skills are about getting through a moment without making it worse. And in order to do that, we need some tools in our toolbox. And there are future videos that in this series that look at what are those skills. So we've got the stop skill, we've got the tip skill, we've got the pros and cons skill, and they're all videos in this series. And they're about helping us to kind of not respond to that action urge, not do things that might actually make things worse. So when faced with an escaped lion from a zoo, your action urge is to run away, and that in that moment, that's probably the right thing to do, you know. Staying and trying to negotiate and pet the lion and talk things out, not an ideal scenario. So in that moment, your action urge is the right, you know, get out of there, move quickly, because it's going to eat you. But quite often our emotions, they often send us mixed signals, and they often want us to do something and respond in a certain way that doesn't necessarily fit with the situation. It doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily going to make that better. And that's why we don't always want to respond to those action urges, because actually sometimes they're not the right thing to do. So for example, someone pushes past you at a concert or at a bar, how might you feel? Well, you might feel very angry. You might feel very cross. And your action urge might be to swear at that person, to shove them back, or even worse, kind of really go at them. And if you did respond in that way, then that has consequences. That has a knock-on effect onto your evening. So you might get thrown out. You might actually mess with someone who's got a mate that's bigger than you and that then sticks up for that person, and you might think, oh, I wish you'd not done that. The people you're with, you might get really cross, that you've created a scene and a situation that didn't have to happen, and ruining their night. They don't necessarily want to leave the concert or the bar, so you might end up on your own. You might end up in a real ruckus. So you might miss the concert, you might lose some friends because they might be fed up of you creating. You might get in trouble with the police, you might get hurt. There's kind of loads of consequences to acting on that action urge to respond to that feeling of anger. Whereas if we use some of these crisis survival skills that I'm going to come on to in a bit, you can choose how to manage that situation differently. You don't have to respond to that initial urge. And that's what we want to do. We want to manage things in a way that keeps us tidy, that doesn't cause us more problems that we've got to then mop up after. Because it's hard work, isn't it?